The day my husband told me he was leaving me, he didn't even have the courage to look me in the eyes. He stood by the front door with one hand on his suitcase while I was still setting the dinner table. The smell of roasted chicken filled our little kitchen. Candles were already lit. I had spent the whole afternoon making his favorite meal because it was our 7th wedding anniversary. "I can't do this anymore," he said quietly. I laughed at first. I honestly thought he was joking. "What do you mean?" I asked, still holding 2 plates. He finally looked at me, but there was no warmth in his eyes. "I'm leaving." The room became strangely silent. Even the clock on the wall seemed louder than before. For how long?" I whispered. He took a deep breath. "Forever." I felt my fingers loosen. One of the plates slipped from my hands and shattered across the floor. He didn't even move to help me. "There is someone else," he admitted. Those 5 words broke something inside me. I wanted to ask who she was. I wanted to believe it was a stranger, someone I had never met. Instead, he answered before I could even speak. "It's Vanessa, my cousin, the same cousin who always arrived at family gatherings wearing expensive dresses and talking about luxury vacations. The same cousin who hugged me every Christmas and called me her little sister." I couldn't breathe. "You and Vanessa?" I finally managed to say. He nodded. "We've been seeing each other for months." Months. While I packed his lunches, while I stayed awake helping him finish work projects, while I believed every late-night meeting he talked about, every memory suddenly felt fake. "I never wanted to hurt you," he said. Those words almost made me smile, because people who don't want to hurt you don't lie every single day. They don't let you build a future while they're secretly planning another one. He picked up his suitcase. "I'm sorry." Then he walked out. The front door closed so softly that it almost sounded polite, but the silence that followed was louder than any scream. I stayed there for what felt like hours. The candles slowly burned out. Dinner became cold. Outside, rain began to fall against the windows. Inside, my whole life had fallen apart. The weeks that followed felt like walking through fog. I barely slept. Friends called, family members texted. Some offered comfort. Others simply wanted the latest gossip. The hardest call came from my mother. "Honey," she said gently, "maybe this is for the best." I didn't answer. How could losing the person I loved ever be for the best? Then came another surprise. Vanessa posted pictures online. She and my husband were smiling on a beach somewhere. The caption read, "Sometimes true love finds you when you least expect it." Thousands of people liked the post. I stared at my phone until my eyes filled with tears. She knew exactly what she was doing. She wanted everyone to believe I had simply been left behind because I wasn't enough. For the first time in my life, I questioned everything about myself. Maybe I wasn't pretty enough. Maybe I wasn't exciting enough. Maybe I had failed as a wife. Those thoughts followed me everywhere. Every mirror became my enemy. Every quiet evening reminded me of the empty chair across the table. One rainy afternoon, while cleaning our bedroom, I found an old notebook hidden in the back of my closet. Inside was something I had completely forgotten. My dream. Years before I got married, I had written one sentence across the very first page. "One day, I will become a television journalist and tell stories that matter." I ran my fingers over those faded words. For the first time since my husband left, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Not happiness. Not yet. Just the smallest spark of hope. Maybe my story wasn't over after all. I closed the notebook slowly and held it against my chest. It had been years since I had even thought about becoming a television journalist. Life had happened. Marriage had happened. Somewhere along the way, my dreams had quietly stepped aside so I could help someone else build theirs. That evening, I made myself a simple cup of tea and sat by the living room window. The rain was still falling. For weeks, I had spent every night asking myself why my marriage had failed. But for the first time, I asked a different question. What happens if I stop looking backward? The answer didn't come immediately, but something inside me felt lighter. The next morning, I opened my laptop and searched for journalism courses in my city. Most of them were expensive. I almost closed the page. Then I noticed a small advertisement at the bottom. Community Broadcasting Program, scholarships available. I stared at the screen for several seconds before clicking. Maybe it was too late. Maybe I was too old. Maybe no one would choose me. Still, I filled out the application. When it asked why I wanted to become a journalist, I didn't try to sound impressive. I simply wrote, because people deserve someone who tells the truth with kindness, and because I finally want to tell my own story too. After pressing submit, I smiled for the first time in months. It wasn't a big smile, just enough to remind myself that I was still alive. A week later, my phone rang. "Hello, is this Emma?" "Yes. I'm calling from the Community Broadcasting Program. We'd like to invite you for an interview." I almost dropped my coffee mug. "Really?" "Yes, can you come tomorrow morning? I'll be there." The interview was held inside a small television station. It wasn't glamorous. The walls needed paint. The chairs were old. But to me, it looked beautiful. For the first time in years, I felt like I belonged somewhere. A woman named Linda welcomed me into her office. She looked to be in her 60s with kind eyes and silver hair. She didn't ask many difficult questions. Instead, she asked, "Emma, why now?" I looked down at my hands. "My husband left me." She stayed quiet. "He left me for my cousin." Still, she didn't interrupt. I spent years helping everyone else chase their dreams. I forgot I had one of my own. Linda smiled gently. "You know," she said, "broken hearts often tell the most honest stories." Those words stayed with me. A few days later, I received another phone call. "Congratulations, Emma. You've been accepted." I covered my mouth as tears rolled down my face. Not tears of sadness, tears of relief. For months, I had felt unwanted. Now someone believed in me. The program wasn't easy. Most of the students were younger than I was. Some had already studied journalism at university. I felt out of place. One afternoon, while practicing on camera, I forgot every single word. The room became silent. "I can't do this," I whispered. One of the instructors smiled. "Everyone says that on their first day." I laughed nervously. "Really?" "Every single one." Slowly, I became more comfortable. I learned how to interview people, how to write short news reports, how to speak clearly without rushing. Every lesson reminded me that I was becoming someone new, not because I wanted revenge, because I wanted my confidence back. Meanwhile, life outside the classroom continued. One evening, my mother called again. "I saw Vanessa today," she said carefully. My stomach tightened. "How is she?" "They're planning a very expensive wedding." I stayed silent. "They seem happy." That sentence hurt more than I expected. After hanging up, I sat alone in my apartment. For a moment, all the old pain returned. Maybe they really were happier without me. Maybe I had been the problem all along. Just then, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Linda. "Tomorrow is your first live practice. Get some rest. I believe in you." I read those 5 words over and over. I believe in you. Funny how a stranger's faith can sometimes heal wounds that family never could. I placed my phone on the bedside table and looked at my reflection in the mirror. I was still healing. The sadness hadn't disappeared. The betrayal still lived somewhere deep inside me. But when I looked into my own eyes, I noticed something that had been missing for a long time. Hope. Small, quiet, fragile, but real. And without knowing it, I had already taken the first steps toward a future that neither my husband nor my cousin could ever have imagined. My first live practice felt nothing like I had imagined. I stood behind the studio cameras with my notes shaking in my hands. The lights seemed brighter than they had during training, and every heartbeat sounded louder than the one before it. Linda walked over and adjusted the microphone on my jacket. "You don't have to be perfect," she said with a gentle smile. "People don't remember perfection, they remember honesty." I took a slow breath and nodded. When the red camera light turned on, I smiled naturally. "Good evening. Thank you for joining us." The words came easier than I expected. For the next few minutes, I forgot about my divorce. I forgot about the loneliness waiting for me at home. I simply focused on telling the story in front of me. When it was over, the room filled with quiet applause. One of the producers walked over. "You have something special." I blinked. "Really?" He smiled. "You make people feel comfortable. That's something you can't teach." Those words stayed with me all day. Weeks slowly turned into months. I became one of the most dependable students in the program. I arrived early every morning. I stayed late whenever someone needed help. Little by little, my confidence returned. One afternoon, Linda handed me a small envelope. "What's this?" I asked. "Open it." Inside was a contract. It wasn't a full-time job. It was only a part-time position as a junior field reporter for the station. Still, my hands started trembling. I got the job? You earned it." I couldn't stop smiling. That evening, I celebrated with nothing more than a slice of chocolate cake from the bakery down the street. For the first time in a very long while, I celebrated myself. Not because someone loved me, because I had finally learned to be proud of myself. A few days later, life reminded me that healing is never a straight path. I received an invitation to my aunt's birthday dinner. At first, I didn't want to go. I knew Vanessa would be there. I knew my ex-husband would probably come with her, but my mother called. "Please come," she said softly. "Don't let them take your family away from you too." After thinking about it all night, I decided she was right. I refused to spend the rest of my life hiding. The restaurant was beautiful. Soft music played in the background. Families laughed around large tables. When I walked inside, several relatives smiled warmly. "It's so good to see you. You look wonderful. You've lost weight." I thanked them politely, then I saw them. Vanessa was wearing an expensive red dress. My former husband sat beside her, laughing as if nothing painful had ever happened. For one brief second, my heart skipped. Then I reminded myself to breathe. They were part of my past, not my future. Vanessa noticed me first. Her smile looked sweet, but her eyes told a different story. "Emma," she said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "I'm so glad you came." She stood and hugged me. Her perfume smelled exactly the same as before. "I've missed you," she whispered. The words felt empty. "I hope you're doing well." "I'm doing fine," I answered calmly. She looked surprised, almost disappointed, as if she had expected me to cry. Dinner began. Everyone talked about work, children, vacations, and birthdays. Then one uncle smiled at me. "So, Emma, are you seeing anyone?" Before I could answer, Vanessa laughed softly. "Oh, she's probably focusing on herself right now." A few relatives looked uncomfortable. I simply smiled. "I am focusing on myself." She tilted her head. "That's nice." There was something in her voice that sounded almost mocking. Then she reached for my ex-husband's hand. "We've actually set a wedding date." The table became quiet. Someone quietly congratulated them. I picked up my glass of water. My hand stayed steady. "Congratulations," I said sincerely. Both of them looked surprised. My ex-husband finally spoke. "Emma, thank you." His voice sounded uncertain, almost guilty. For the first time since our divorce, I looked directly into his eyes. I didn't see the man I had once loved. I saw a stranger carrying a heavy burden, because truly happy people don't avoid eye contact. They don't search your face for anger they hope to find. They don't need your forgiveness to enjoy their own happiness. As dinner ended, my aunt hugged me tightly. "I'm proud of you," she whispered. "For what?" "You walked into this room with grace." On my drive home, I realized something unexpected. Seeing them together hadn't broken me. It had set me free. For months, I had believed they had taken my future. Now I understood the truth. They had only taken the life I thought I wanted. The life waiting ahead was becoming something far greater, and I had no idea that my biggest opportunity was only days away. The Monday after my aunt's birthday dinner began like any other. I arrived at the television station before sunrise, carrying a cup of coffee and a notebook that was already filled with ideas. The building was quiet except for the sound of people preparing the morning broadcast. As I walked toward my desk, Linda called my name. "Emma, can you come into my office for a minute?" Her voice was calm, but there was excitement in her eyes. I sat down across from her. She folded her hands on the desk. "We've been watching your work very closely." I swallowed nervously. "You've improved faster than anyone expected." I smiled. "Thank you." She leaned forward. "Our evening anchor is taking maternity leave." I waited. "We need someone to fill in." For a moment, I couldn't speak. "You mean, we want you to host the evening news?" I stared at her, convinced I had misunderstood. "Me?" Linda nodded. "Yes, Emma. I've only been here a few months." "I know. There are people with much more experience." "There are. So, why me?" She smiled warmly. "Because when you tell a story, people stop and listen." Tears filled my eyes before I could stop them. Only 1 year earlier, I had been sitting alone in my apartment, wondering if my life was over. Now someone was trusting me with a dream I had almost forgotten. The next few weeks were the busiest of my life. Every morning started before 6. Every evening ended long after sunset. I practiced reading scripts. I worked on my voice. I learned how to stay calm when something unexpected happened during a live broadcast. Some nights I was so tired that I fell asleep with my glasses still on. But I didn't complain. I had prayed for another chance. Now I intended to honor it. One afternoon, the station photographer asked me to pose for promotional pictures. As the camera flashed, I barely recognized the woman smiling back. She looked confident, peaceful, strong, not because life had been easy. Because she had survived when she thought she couldn't. A few days before my first live broadcast, I received another unexpected message. It came from my ex-husband. "Can we talk?" I stared at the screen for several minutes. Almost a year had passed since he walked out of our home. In all that time, he had never once asked how I was doing. Now he wanted to talk. I typed 3 words. "About what?" His reply came almost immediately. "Please, just once." I looked out the office window. The old version of me would have said yes without thinking. The woman I was becoming had learned something important. Not every closed door deserves to be opened again. I simply replied, "I wish you well, but I think it's better if we both move forward." Then I put my phone away. For the first time, saying no didn't feel cruel. It felt healthy. Friday evening finally arrived. The newsroom buzzed with quiet energy. Producers walked quickly between desks. Cameras rolled into position. Makeup artists gave everyone one last touch before the show. My heart pounded inside my chest. Linda stood beside me. "Nervous?" "A little," she laughed softly. "Good, good. It means this still matters to you." She squeezed my shoulder. "Just be yourself." 30 seconds. A producer counted down with her fingers. 10, 9, 8. I took one slow breath. 3, 2, 1. The red light above the camera turned on. I smiled. "Good evening, I'm Emma Carter, and thank you for joining us tonight." The words flowed naturally. Every story felt important. Every interview felt personal. I wasn't pretending to be someone else. I was simply being myself. When the broadcast ended, applause filled the studio. "You did it," Linda whispered. I laughed through happy tears. I actually did. The next morning, I stopped at a small grocery store on my way home. As I reached for a loaf of bread, someone quietly said my name. "Emma?" I turned around. Standing only a few feet away was my ex-husband. He looked almost frozen. His shopping basket slowly slipped from his hand and landed on the floor. For several long seconds, he simply stared at me. I saw you on television last night, he finally whispered. His voice shook. You looked incredible. I thanked him politely. Then I noticed something surprising. The expensive watch was gone. The confident smile I once knew had disappeared. Instead, he looked tired, older, almost regretful. He opened his mouth as if he wanted to explain everything. But before he could say another word, I heard a familiar voice calling my name from behind. Emma, there you are. I turned around with a smile, completely unaware that the next few minutes would change both of our lives forever. I turned around with a smile. Walking toward me was David, the station's senior producer. He carried 2 cups of coffee and looked completely unaware of the silence behind me. There you are, he said, laughing. I've been calling your phone for 5 minutes. I checked my bag. My phone is on silent again. He smiled and handed me one of the coffees. I figured. Then he noticed the man standing across from us. Oh, sorry, am I interrupting something? Before I could answer, my ex-husband quickly shook his head. No, not at all. David smiled politely. I'm David. They shook hands. I'm Emma's producer. My ex-husband forced a smile, but I could see the surprise on his face. The producer? He repeated. David laughed. She's being modest. Emma has become the favorite anchor at the station. People love her. Last night's ratings were incredible. I felt my cheeks turn warm. Oh, stop. I'm serious, David replied. The network is already talking about giving you your own weekly program. For a brief moment, nobody spoke. My ex-husband simply looked at me. It wasn't jealousy I saw. It was disbelief, as if he had just realized that the woman he walked away from had become someone he never expected. David glanced at his watch. We're going to be late for the meeting. I nodded. I'll be right there. He smiled and walked toward the parking lot. Now it was just the 2 of us again. The silence felt different this time. Not painful, peaceful. My ex-husband looked down at the floor before finally speaking. I owe you an apology. I waited quietly. I thought happiness was somewhere else. He swallowed hard. I thought money would solve everything. His voice became softer. But it didn't. I listened without interrupting. Vanessa and I, he stopped for a moment, we're getting divorced. I wasn't expecting those words. He gave a sad smile. We spent so much time chasing a perfect life that we forgot how to be decent people. He looked at me with tears in his eyes. I've regretted leaving you almost every day. For a long moment, I simply stood there. A year earlier, hearing those words would have meant everything to me. I had imagined this moment countless times. I thought I would cry. I thought I would ask him why. I thought I would finally get the answers that had haunted me. But standing there, I realized something surprising. I didn't need them anymore. The questions had disappeared, not because they had been answered, because I had outgrown them. I smiled gently. I forgive you. His eyes filled with tears. You do. Yes, he looked relieved. Then I added softly, but forgiveness doesn't mean going back. He nodded slowly. I know. I hope one day you forgive yourself too. He lowered his head. I'll try. He picked up his shopping basket. Before walking away, he turned one last time. I'm proud of you, Emma, I smiled. Thank you. Then he disappeared into the crowd, and somehow it didn't hurt. Not anymore. A few months later, my own television program officially premiered. It wasn't about celebrities or scandals. It was about ordinary people with extraordinary stories. Single parents, teachers, nurses, grandparents raising grandchildren. People who quietly carried hope through difficult days. Every interview reminded me why I had chosen this path. Stories heal, not because they erase pain, because they remind us that pain never has the final word. One evening after finishing a broadcast, Linda found me sitting alone in the studio. She smiled. You've come a long way. I looked around the room. I almost didn't. She sat beside me. Do you ever think about that old life? I thought for a moment. Sometimes. Do you miss it? I smiled softly. I miss the woman I used to be. Linda looked surprised. The woman who believed love meant sacrificing herself for everyone else. I paused. I'm grateful she existed. Why? Because she helped me become the woman I am now. Linda squeezed my hand. I think she'd be proud of you. I looked toward the camera that had become part of my new life. Maybe she would. Looking back, I no longer see the day my husband left as the day my life fell apart. I see it as the day my real life quietly began. Losing him forced me to find myself. His betrayal led me back to my forgotten dream, and the pain I thought would destroy me became the reason I could understand other people's hearts. If you're listening to my story while carrying your own heartbreak, I hope you remember this. Sometimes the people who walk away are not taking your future. They're simply making room for the future that was always waiting for you. Healing doesn't happen all at once. It comes one quiet morning, one brave decision, one small step at a time. And one day, without even realizing it, you'll look in the mirror and meet someone stronger than you ever imagined. That is exactly what happened to me. And for the first time in my life, I truly understood that the greatest success isn't making the people who hurt you regret losing you. It's building a life so full of peace that their choices no longer define your happiness.